Well, we are moving forward from the Ten Commandments and the book of Exodus. So those Ten Commandments are at Exodus chapter 20. And we have more commandments, chapter 21, chapter 22, chapter 23. Commandments about various things, but they can be more or less traced back into the Ten Commandments. So kind of an extrapolation, if you will, of the 10. Then we get to chapter 24. In chapter 24, Israel accepts this covenant proposal. The elders have a meal, the Lord is present at the meal, and they basically say, yes, we do. We will agree to the covenant. We will do everything that you commanded us so that we are a holy nation, a kingdom of priests, and that we are most treasured to you. So the marriage, if you will, is on, and the covenant has been accepted. And then we get to chapter 25. Chapter 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. Honestly, some of the most boring stuff you'll ever read. It is very detail oriented, almost overbearingly so. And it's kind of exciting though, because it's all about the tabernacle. So highly detailed and gets rather tedious reading, but it's about the construction of the tabernacle, the furnishing of it, the priesthood, what they are to wear. And so the exciting thing is that God actually wants to dwell in the midst of his people, that God is not simply going to covenant with them and remain distant, that God wants to dwell in the midst of the people. And so that's the purpose of the building of the tabernacle. So that is rather exciting, even though the reading itself is so laborious, so boring. Then we get to chapter 32, and 32 through 34, just an incredible account of Israel's disobedience and God's mercy and grace. And we're going to read through that together, walk through it best we can. And I have provided you also the option of reading some material that I wrote on it, but we'll go ahead and work with reading through it together. And so Exodus 32, and I will pick it up at verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Now, a couple of questions about this. So first of all, who does the golden calf replace? I know your first thought is that the golden calf replaced God. But if you read it closely, the golden calf was a replacement of Moses. As for this fellow Moses, we don't know what has happened to him. See, Moses was their God connection. And Moses is up on the mountain talking with God, and he's been up there for so long that the people don't know what has happened to him. And so they want to reconnect and get going again. They don't want to just spend their lives there at Sinai. And so make us gods who will go before us, make us a connection to God who will lead us and get us out of this place. So very important for us to pick up on that the golden calf is first and foremost a replacement of Moses. Now you might be asking, why a golden calf? Well, first of all, an idol was meant to be a connecting point with God, any God. And here, notice that they make this golden calf, and who do they hold the festival to? They hold the festival to the Lord. Okay, and you'll see Lord is in all capital letters. So they're holding this festival to the Lord, to Israel's God, to Yahweh, and they are trying to connect and control God through this golden calf. And see, that's what idols did, or that was the purpose of idols, that you would make an idol that would represent something, and then through manipulating that idol, you would actually manipulate the power or the person that you are trying to get hold of. Okay, I don't know much about voodoo, don't really know anything about voodoo, but it's a type of sympathetic magic. And so you make a voodoo doll that represents somebody, you manipulate the doll, you poke the doll, you torture the doll, and then the doll that represents the person, that person who is represented by the doll, they suffer. And they suffer pain, they suffer torment, they suffer affliction. So your manipulation of the doll becomes a way to manipulate and impact the person that the doll represents. By the way, my back has been hurting quite a bit, and I don't know quite why that is, but it's almost like it's getting needles poked into the side. Well, I'll try to maintain. So, anyways, so that's how idolatry worked in this sense, that you have something that you manipulate or control in order to manipulate, attempt to control the gods, the powers that be. Okay, temple prostitution was understood the same way, that you would go to a temple and unite yourself with a prostitute sexually, and in doing that, you are trying to manipulate the gods, and they, in most of the ancient world, have female goddesses and male gods, and they were counterparts to each other, and you would try to bring these gods together so that there would be fertility on earth, whether that be through rain, whether that be through your livestock producing your family. And so you would join yourself with a temple prostitute in order to manipulate the gods to come together so that there would be procreation on the face of the earth, or rain so that your ground could be fertile and produce, etc. So realize that when they make this god, this golden calf, they are replacing Moses. Moses had been their connecting point with this God, with the Lord who brought them up out of Egypt. They still want to tap into that power, but they want to control it, and they don't have Moses to do it. And so they're trying to figure out a new handle, if you will, on God. And they come up with this golden calf. Aaron has them take off their earrings. They take the gold, they melt it together. He fashions it with a tool. And so you have this golden calf that they create. A calf would have been a symbol of strength and fertility. And so they want to be stronger, they want offspring, they want fertility, and they want to get to a land where it's flowing with milk and honey, where there will be fertility and livestock. And so a golden calf. And you'll notice that they have a festival, a worship festival in front of this, and that they rise up and play. This word play, it gets used in a number of ways. It can be used in the sense of making sport of something or someone. When Joseph was accused of rape by Potiphar's wife, she accused Joseph of trying to make sport of her, okay, of using her sexually for play. And we think that that's one of the things that's going on in this festival, is that there is a lot of sexual activity going on, a lot of sexual play going on in front of the golden calf, because they're trying to manipulate God to make them fertile and to take them to a fertile land instead of this wilderness area. And then the second way that sometimes this word play or sport gets used is in terms of showing off your strength, and kind of violently. And so there's an account later on where David is now the king, and you have Joab, the commander of David's men, and you have Abner, the commander of Saul's men. Saul's now dead, but he still has men left. And the two commanders, Joab and Abner, they decide to, instead of fighting it out with their full armies, to select their top men. And they're going to let their top men go at it and engage in this play, engage in this sport, while the two armies watch on. And whichever group of men wins, then the victory is decided. Well, they grab each other by the beard with one hand, use their other hand to thrust their sword into and through their stomach, and they all fall over dead on top of each other. And that was play. That was sport. And so we think that also what's going on is not only sexual play, but kind of violent play, showing off your strength, being violent, conquering somebody in front of the calf. I don't know if there was any death yet or not, But you get the picture of kind of this violent sexual party in front of the calf because they want to manipulate God in terms of making them strong and making them fruitful and taking them to a land where they'll be victorious in a land that's flowing with milk and honey. So just realize that's what we have going on here. They made the golden calf to replace Moses in an effort to manipulate God to get them where they want to be. Okay, now you realize they are breaking commandment number 2, that they've made an image whereby they can attempt to control God, to worship God, to manipulate God. All right, we are going on still in chapter 32, now verse 7. And the Lord said to Moses, they're up on the mountain, and the Lord said to Moses, go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone that my wrath may not, therefore let me alone that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them in order that I may make a great nation of you, Moses. Did you notice that the Lord disowns them? They're no longer the Lord's people. Moses, they're your people whom you brought up out of Egypt. And did you notice that the Lord is ready to wipe them out, that he's going to destroy them? And in fact, at verse 10, he tells Moses, leave me alone, get out of my face. I am going to destroy them, and I will start all over with you. And so God is burning mad. God does not enjoy being manipulated, does not enjoy people trying to manipulate God. And so God says, I'm done with your people, Moses, whom you brought up out of Egypt. They've corrupted themselves, they've turned aside, and I'm going to destroy them. Out of my face, I'll start all over with you. Look at verse 11. But Moses implored the Lord his God and said, O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, with evil intent did he bring them out, to kill them in the mountains and then consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your burning anger and relent from this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self and said to them, I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your offspring, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. I hope you notice what Moses did. First of all, Moses kind of threw the people back at God. God, they're your people whom you brought up out of Egypt. So why should you be so angry with them? They're yours, okay? And you're the one who rescued them. And then Moses also says, if you wipe them out, what are the Egyptians going to say about you? Kind of like, what kind of a God does that? Rescues people to bring them out to simply destroy them. So God, what about your reputation? And then the third thing Moses says is, what about your promise? What about your integrity, God? You made promises to Abraham and Isaac and to Jacob or Israel. Promise them offspring and promise them the promised land. What about your promise, God? And so they're your people. You brought them out. What are the Egyptians going to say about you? What kind of a God rescues his people to simply destroy them? And what about your promise? And God considers what Moses says. And God changes his mind. God relents. Don't know exactly what to do with this. We'll talk more about it. But the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. And so Moses is able to kind of talk God down, if you will, and God relents of consuming, destroying the people, and starting all over with Moses. We move on. Verse 15, still in 32. Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets that were written on both sides, on the front and on the back they were written. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a noise of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound of shouting for victory or the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear." And as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to powder and scattered it on the water and made the people of Israel drink it. And Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. For they said to me, 'Make us gods who shall go before us.' As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. So I said to them, 'Let any who have gold take it off.' So they gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf." And when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him, and he said to them, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, put your sword on your side, each of you, and go to and fro from gate to gate throughout the camp. And each of you kill his brother and his companion and his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and that day about 3,000 men of the people fell. And Moses said, "Today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, so that he might bestow a blessing upon you this day." Moses stopped the party. It was a pretty bloody stop. Well, a few things with this. First of all, who was the first person to break all 10 commandments? Yeah, I know, you got it. Moses. Some of you are scratching your heads. What did Moses do? Remember, he had the 10 commandments in his hands, and he saw what was going on, and now the covenant has been broken. And so he threw the commandments down and shattered all 10 of them. So he's the first to break all 10 commandments. I know it's not as funny if you got to explain it, but I figure you'll use it. So anyway, so why did he do that? Well, I think he was angry for sure, but I also think it was a symbolic act, that the covenant was broken. And so he's holding the covenant in his hands, the terms of the covenant, and he sees that the covenant has already been broken. And so he throws it down, shatters it. It's kind of a symbolic act of this is the state of things. Things are broken. He calls upon Aaron. Aaron, how did this happen? What's going on here? And did you notice that Aaron takes no responsibility whatsoever? He puts the blame on the people, but even more, he puts the blame on Moses. You know this people, Moses. You know they're prone to evil, and yet you were gone all this time. And the people came to me and said, "Make us gods who will go before us." So he's not just blaming the people, he's blaming Moses, that Moses, you should have known better. You know this people, and yet you stayed away. It's on you, Moses. And Aaron also takes no responsibility for the golden calf. I simply took an offering, threw gold in the fire, and out popped this calf. Okay, now the narrator has told us that they fashioned the calf with the tools, okay, that it didn't just pop out, but Aaron takes no responsibility. The narrator holds Aaron responsible, Moses holds Aaron responsible, but Aaron will take no responsibility. Moses says, "Who's for the Lord?" And the sons of Levi, the Levites, step forward and they put a stop to the party. It is no doubt a bloody stop, but they show that they are more committed to the Lord than to their own people. And so they're going to be honored with priestly service and with service in the temple. So the party is stopped, and I want to get, I think maybe we'll stop here, and then I'll get the next video rolling. So realize kind of golden calf, replacing Moses, God's angry, Moses angry, party comes to a stop, but it's not resolved yet.